The path of an artist is full of challenges, which has pushed me to reach out to other professionals about their experiences. Join us as we explore the journeys of fine artists who have turned their passion of creating art into a profession. From their highs to their hurdles, these are real insights, breakthroughs, and triumphs to inspire other creators to reach higher. Welcome to the Business of Art podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to this next episode 22 for the Business of Art podcast. Today we're going to be listening to a recording of another podcast I was on with Greg Denning. And anyway, he's a pretty incredible guy, and I had just a really awesome opportunity to do an interview with him. And we talked about the path to mastery and what that entails. It is an audio recording, so there's not a lot of video, but I do have some images to go along with it. So let's jump right in, and I hope you guys are taking notes. This is going to it's a good listen, a lot of great takeaways. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's jump right in.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Formidable Family Man podcast. I'm your host, Greg Denning. Today in the house, got my good friend, Mark McKenna. This is the first one I've done like in-house here. This is so fun.
That's awesome.
So,
well, I'm honored to be a part of it and just at all, but especially to be the first. That's awesome.
That's awesome. This is super fun. I like this. And Mark's here with his family. They came over to Portugal to stay with us for a long haul. And Mark is a world-class artist, and he's going to tell some of his story and how he got there. The little I know is this man can take animals, it's wildlife focus, and he just does magic. And I was going to say magic on the canvas, but you don't even use canvas, which I thought was super rad. Anyways, we can get into all that stuff. So he and I, we started communicating, I don't know, a few months ago or whatever, and then he had reached out to Rachel for something, and Rachel's like, look at this guy, he's an artist. And we pulled up your site, and I started looking at the animals. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I saw a buffalo on there. Yeah. So I saw some different things like, so okay, this guy's good, really good. And you guys, I am just thrilled out of my mind because he is painting, while he's here at our place, he is painting me a lion. And this thing is unbelievable. And I love lions so much. So to watch it happen in real time is awesome. So
it's going to be pretty rad.
It's going to be amazing. Okay, so what I want to talk about, brother, actually, you give us a little bit of background. Tell us about you and your family, and then kind of get into the journey of art. What we're going to talk about today, gentlemen, is this path of mastery, and how you went from, as a kid, enjoying art to like becoming just phenomenal in your I don't even know what you call it, like
style.
Your style. There it is. Your own unique style.
Yeah.
So anyways, tell us about you, your family, and let's get in the journey of art.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we've been married now we're in our 19th year of marriage, which is awesome. We have 6 kids. They're all boys except for 5. And we got one little guy. He's number 5 out of the 6. We thought we'd try to get another boy, and that just backfired on us. But we have spent most of our life we've lived mostly in Idaho and Wyoming. I guess it's actually mostly Wyoming now. We've been there for quite a while, and I've always been an artist from when I was young. I always loved drawing, doodling, sketching, and through high school, I was probably one of the better art students. You know, I had probably more talent, at least visible talent that was, you know, around, at least when I was going through there, and everybody knew me as, you know, Mark's a good artist.
So right there, that's powerful because it becomes an identity.
Absolutely.
For you and for others.
Absolutely.
You do something great, and people are like, wow, man, you're really good. You're the artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that happening in your home? Was there any identity around that of like, hey, you're a great artist? Was there praise and identity built into that?
Yes, absolutely. And my parents were always really supportive.
That's awesome.
Pursuing that talent.
Okay. So gentlemen, as you're making a list here, either mentally or on notes, like these pieces are important either for our own journey or for our kids, like as we're facilitating that stuff.
Yeah.
So supporting it, encouraging it, embracing the identity. I hate the idea of talent just being natural. Like, oh, I was just born this way. I don't think anyone's born that way.
Yeah.
My guess is you spent a lot of time drawing and doodling, even as a kid.
There was this formative moment that happened, and I should say process. When I was in 8th grade, I had probably my first real elective art class that I was able to get into because I just wanted to do art. And one of the projects we did was a pencil portrait of a famous person. And I picked this random guy. I don't even know why I picked him, but it was just like, oh, it's a fun image, so I'll draw him. And I was just kind of going through the motion, but as I went through the project and as my teacher was teaching me how to measure and get proportions accurate and things like that. And it took me a long time. I was very meticulous, very careful. And in the end, I had a likeness of this person. And it wasn't super solid, but it looked like him. Like you could tell who it was. And it blew my mind. And it lit my fire.
Because of the process.
Yeah.
And getting things proportional is it's so hard.
Even if it's millimeters off, it makes a massive difference.
So yeah, you're talking about millimeters. I mean, it is so hard. And any of us who have spent time trying to draw or trying to capture something, it's so tough.
Absolutely.
To get, the proportions right. And I did that too, brother. I elementary, middle school, high school, I was taking the art classes and I just loved it. And I wrestled with it. I struggled with it. I remember, same as you, spending hours and hours and hours with pencil, or I did some dot imaging one time. I did shading. I loved shading. I was always fascinated with shading. And I loved it. And I worked on the same thing. I ended up homeless, and so I stopped drawing.
That changes things.
It changes things. The course of my life went a different direction. But that's so cool. And so the work you put in, and I loved that you just stated that, like you put in the work there and you had a mentor, a coach, a teacher.
Absolutely. And with that success, it, like I said, it lit my fire. And from that point on, like for the next 2 years, I was doing portraits. I was drawing people. Yeah.
Because you had a success and you're like, hey, that was awesome.
Yeah.
You get this huge win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're psyching, you're like, this was awesome. You pay a price for it. The reward's palpable.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was literally the next year in 9th grade, I had teachers who were paying me to draw portraits of their kids for them. I got like $50 a pop. And I was spending probably 40 plus hours on these drawings, but I didn't care. I was doing something I loved and I was getting some money for it. So
as a 9th grader, you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah. So just piling on that positive reinforcement, really just, it was unbelievable. And
Mark, you went pro as a 9th grader.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It is.
I was professional.
Like, as soon as you make your first dollar for something you love, you're like, that's it. I'm in. I'm winning now.
Yeah.
And so you were making money and you loved it and you were doing faces.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Pencil portraits. And I just kept, and I think with each one, it got better and better, and
now, kind of like you said, well, it's the natural process.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, again, today we're talking about the pursuit of mastery. That's it. You're like, okay, how am I? You're learning a ton.
Yeah.
In that journey.
And what was really neat to see was as I continued through that process where I was measuring, I was like using a ruler literally and making sure that my proportions were exact. But as time went on, my brain automated a lot of that process. And so there were some, like when I got into high school, we had a figure drawing portion of one of the classes where we had live models sitting in front of us, and you can't go and measure.
You can't walk
You know?
with a ruler.
Right. Exactly. And make them stand perfectly still.
Right.
But I was able to translate very accurately, proportionally, these drawings of these people, like their upper torso, their face, with charcoal. And anyway, it was incredible.
This is one thing I said to you a few days ago. You've learned to see things that we don't see.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think was just repetition and familiarity, proximity to it?
I think it's most, if not all, of that.
Was the
process of repetition, because I was so committed to getting it, and that it didn't matter what the work was. It didn't matter how much. It was like, I'm going to get there.
There's another element.
Yeah.
Why? What drove that?
I think it comes back to that identity. Like, I'm a good artist, and I didn't back then. I didn't know that I was going to be a renowned wildlife painter. I had no clue. In fact, I don't even know if I thought I was going to make a living with it. I don't think that was even in my radar. It was more like, no, I'm an artist. I draw, and I didn't even do much painting. It was drawing.
And you were just driven.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Like you had a love of it, and then a determination to get better and better.
Yeah.
I'm sure initially you were just like, I'm just going to be really good, really good, really good. I don't even know if at that age you were like, I want to be one of the best ever.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was more like, I want to learn how to draw that. And I see that looks cool. I want to draw that. It was like anything I could see that was interesting to me is like, I'm going to draw it.
There's another element, pursuing what interests you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then wanting to do it well. What drove you to want to do it well? Because so many of us are like, I want to draw, and we draw a stick figure, and it's like, ugh, okay. It goes absolutely against what I call the good enough attitude, where most of us live in this good enough attitude. You're like, I'm taking art class, and it's good enough. We just do enough to pass the class. We do enough to not get fired. What drove you to want to do it really well?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think back and go back into that mental state I was in to gauge it. And honestly, it was, to me, it was I want it to look real. I want it to look just like it looks. And until it was there, I just not that I wasn't satisfied, because I was always enjoying the process. And every drawing, I loved it and I enjoyed it. But it was like, there's still more. Like there's just, I don't know, at least there was far enough ahead of me that I could see where it was drawing me in that direction. And then the neat thing about the whole process is you get to that destination, and all of a sudden another vista appears. Your heights climb. The standard is raised every time. And so that's the beauty of being an artist, is that you've never, like, you reach points, but you've never made your destination.
Another element right there. Like masters never feel like, oh, I've arrived, I'm here. So you just keep chasing it, and because there's another level of greatness.
There's always new heights to climb, and it's the growth that comes from each of those challenges. You see that apple, that carrot, whatever it is you're going for, and you work hard, you get there, and then once you get there, it's kind of anticlimactic. It's like, oh, I did it, and but it was overcoming the challenge and the growth that was way more fulfilling in the end.
There it is. I was going to say that same thing. The real meaning, the real fulfillment is in the journey. Well, and I would say the journey of becoming.
Absolutely.
Because you have to acquire the skill to be able to do the thing. So once you get the thing, you're like, oh, that was cool, I did it. But look who you've become. You acquired a skill set now that you can use again and again and again.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
For the last 12 years, I have been a professional oil painter, and it has been an incredible journey with some really big challenges and a lot of successes. I've been included in some of Western Art's biggest museum shows. I've been featured in some of the top Western Art magazines. I've sold hundreds of paintings, and I've made a really great living. But there's definitely been a massive learning curve to get my art to where it is today. So I've set out to help shrink that learning curve for other artists who are on the same path that I was. I'm really excited to announce the early bird launch of my online course, The Business of Art. In The Business of Art, I'll be guiding you step by step through my painting process, going through everything from what materials I use, how I prep my panels, all the way to varnishing and framing my art. And I'll be going over the techniques that have helped me to transform my work into what it is now. I'm also pulling back the curtain on how I utilize Photoshop to efficiently get my reference images solid and ready to paint from. But that's not all. Understanding the value of your work and how to price it is crucial, which is why I'm also including my painting price calculator. I've personally developed this calculator over the last several years, and it has made pricing my work extremely simple and has saved me a ton of time. Guys, I truly believe that this course is worth the investment and will be a great resource for you on your art journey. But if you don't find the value that you're looking for, we have a full 30-day money-back guarantee. Click the link below, and I look forward to seeing you in the course.
Hey, let's talk for a second about exposure. During this time period, let's say through high school, were you being exposed to great art or to great artists?
That's a really great question. As I think about it, I think that I had, the different teachers in the art classes that I was taking, they would expose me to different art styles, genres. There was a couple of times when we had a guest artist come in. We had a watercolorist who was pretty renowned in the area. He came and demonstrated, and it was so cool to watch him create this image with very careful washes with watercolor, which I still to this day don't love watercolor because I don't love how unforgiving it is. It's a very precise, carefully planned out, executed process.
Well,
and to me, it's like I don't like that. I don't have the freedom I want, like I do with oil paint. But it was neat to see that. And then there was another experience where there was a pretty renowned artist and a good friend of mine. Her aunt had a relationship with this family, and his name is Arnold Freeberg. I don't know if you've heard of Arnold
heard that
Freeberg,
name, yeah.
but he did a lot of the artwork for like the Ten Commandments. That original movie, and a lot of different old school movies with these just jacked guys. Every one of them is ripped. Even the 8-year-old kid is ripped. But he did incredible portraits for royalty, like the Queen of England. And anyway, I had the opportunity to go and help serve at his it's like his 95th birthday party, because my friend knew that I was an artist. I loved art, and she was like, she talked to her aunt and said, hey, because she had the opportunity to go do this, and she's like, I have a friend who would love this. And so we went and helped at this party, like, cleaning up dishes and, just taking out hors d'oeuvres and things like that. But I got to go into this guy's studio, and from floor to ceiling and, corner to corner in this big room, it was covered with his painting. And he had stacks of paintings up against the wall. And I was just like,
so inspiring.
It was a formative experience. And then I got a book signed by him, but I was able to see over his lifetime what he had created, because so much of his stuff was made not necessarily to sell as an original. A lot of them were, and that's why I got to see the Queen of England's portrait that was in process and things like that. But it was mind blowing what this guy had created, and I had it was this like Mount Everest. I'm here at sea level, and he's at Everest, and it's like, holy cow, there's a lot further I can go with this.
Which I think is so important to have close up exposure to greatness.
Yeah.
It's when you're at sea level, to see the Everest.
Yeah.
And for you to go into his studio, that's rare sacred ground right there.
It was. And for me, I'll never forget that.
Right.
Ever. Yeah.
That's so powerful. And I think it's part of the process. So many of us are limited in what we achieve in life simply because we've never been exposed to it. We just don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, we don't even know it's possible.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And then if you hear it or see it on TV or something, like, it's so far away. But to be in his house, in his studio, see his art, be like, okay, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah, having that sensory experience. And he wasn't even in the studio. He was at his birthday party.
Right.
But it was my friend's aunt who had permission to take me to the studio.
Oh, yes.
And anyway, it was just one of those things. And it's funny because in this conversation, I haven't thought a whole lot about that experience since then. But as I look back, it's like I haven't realized how formative that was. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you keep pursuing it. You're just doing it for fun, making a little money here and there. If you're going through high school, college now, keep going with the story.
So I decided when I went to college that I would be an art major because I had familial support, which was awesome. But
did they ever say anything about a career or like, hey,
yeah, and
there's no money in art,
right? And I don't know if that was ever said. I don't remember that actually being said by any of my parents, but it was kind of just this understood reality that artists don't make a lot of money. You know,
you might be an art teacher,
right?
Yeah,
right. And so for me, it's like, and I didn't really have an interest in teaching at that point. I was all about I want to get better at art, and especially when you go to college and you work with these art professors who had histories in the art world professionally. Most of the times they had professional experience. You got to see their work, and it was just like next level. Absolutely,
that's
it's like
awesome.
Always beyond where I was at.
There's another element.
Yeah,
exposing yourselves to people who are above you. I love that.
Well, and it was like at that point I had executive skills. Like I could execute. I could look at something and draw something to make it look like it. But when I saw these other artists, there was this level of creativity that I had never seen, like or really got to see in action. You know, see the process of coming up with an idea,
ooh,
and then executing that visually. And so it was just a whole new level of challenge, another dimension, you know, to the challenges that I had. I could draw anybody or anything, you know, you put in front of me, no problem. And I got a lot of recognition for that still. And I was leaps and bounds beyond most of the students in the art program that I was in, as far as that was concerned. But as far as creativity goes, I was a pup. You know, I was definitely, you know, pretty infantile, I would say.
It's fascinating. And especially with something like art, there's so many different aspects and so many avenues, so many ways to be an artist, so many ways to even be a painter.
Right.
And this is just insightful to me. Even that element, you're like, hey, I can look at something and I can replicate it. But creative art, like just create some imaginary world and paint it or draw it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's another level.
Whole nother, yeah, like dimension, seriously. Yep. And I still to this day feel like that's definitely, like I've developed a lot further in my creative capacity, but I'll like use a lot of photography and Photoshop, and I'll combine, but my starting point is with these images, not necessarily like an idea. And so I've kind of learned to work with my limitations and with the help of technology, and you know, because a lot of times, especially I'm doing something that's a lot more complex with multiple animals in an environment, I'm combining images in Photoshop. I'm grabbing the animal from this one, the animal from that one, the clouds from this image, you know, and making the angles of light are consistent.
Yeah.
You know, so that the shadows and everything looks accurate. You know, I'm taking this, you know, like recently I did one of a sow, a bear with 2 cubs, and I had photographed them myself in Yellowstone National Park.
That's awesome.
which was, that's one of the funnest aspects of my job is going out and taking pictures of critters. But then going into the studio on the computer and finding the right image for her gesture that I want, where she's kind of moving forward, but she's looking back. And I placed one of her, she only had one cub, but I made it two. I just changed one of them to look a little bit different. So, but I placed one of them where she was looking back at it. And then there was another one kind of ahead of her. And it was like just like this nice progression in the painting where they're moving in a direction, but there's an interaction going on. And that's really fun. But like to just come up with an idea in my brain and then to execute it in a realistic way, like I still don't really know how to approach that. Like I don't have the skills without really great reference material to be looking at and working with.
See, and it's awesome to hear you say that, because you know where your limitations are, you know where your strengths are, and so you lean into your strengths.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I'm strong, this is where I excel. So work in that lane.
Yeah.
And then use technology, use photography, use whatever you've got to put together like, hey, this is where I want to excel.
Yeah.
And work there.
Yeah.
I love that. That's another great lesson.
So yeah, it's been and so to kind of make a long story short, through college, I absolutely loved it, the art program, but I still had that whole idea, like starving artist. And so I was going to be a dentist. I was taking all the pre-med, anat and phys, chemistry, all that stuff so that I could take the DAT, which is the dental exam, that you take to get accepted into dental school. And I was kind of I was very much going to do that. And then one of my art professors, he came up to me one day and he'd heard that I was planning to be a dentist, and he had been a professional illustrator for decades up to this point and made a really good living and supported a family. And
okay, so he was a legitimate professional and a professor.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. And so he was just teaching adjunct at the college because he just loved it. He wanted to be an influence. And so he took me aside and kind of kicked me in the butt, hypothetically or metaphorically speaking, and just said, why would you want to work in people's mouths when you can make beautiful things?
Love it.
And he kind of told me his story, or how he had made a living and provided for a family and so on. And at that point, we already had our first daughter, or maybe my wife was pregnant at that point. So I was very much like, we've got to figure this out. Like I got to provide for this family. And, I don't want to be a starving artist. I don't want my family to starve and to suffer. And when I heard that from him, and my wife actually was privy to that conversation as well, which was really neat. He happens to be a family friend of my wife's family. And so just the stars aligned, for that interaction to take place. And both of us needed to hear it, that it was possible.
Yes.
And
well, I think that's a huge point right there.
Yeah.
You both, husband and wife, be like, hey, this is possible. Yeah. There's a shot here. We can make this a reality.
And we were literally, we were living in Southeast Idaho at the time, and we were ready to move to Texas because my grades weren't solid, like phenomenal. And I was worried about getting accepted in dental school because I didn't have I knew this stuff, but I just wasn't a phenomenal student all the time. And so we were going to move to Texas and get residency there spend a year, get residency work, and then get into some undergraduate program and apply for dental school. So we were ready to make a massive shift that would have altered the entire course of our lives. So we were kind of at that crossroads, about to happen. And
it is so wild to think about moments like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what if this guy had not said something?
Seriously. No,
man, it's huge.
It's a pivot. That is the absolute hinge point for our entire life right there. And so I bagged all the pre-med stuff and kind of jumped in full bore. I applied for the illustration program. It's a BFA program that they had at the school I was at, and got accepted. and started learning how to create art digitally. And I took some illustration classes, which really pushed the creative, compositional, ideation, creation side of my work. Just really opened up, at least, from my perspective, it opened up a lot of different ways to pursue it and to look at being an artist. And it made sense to me to go that route because it was more of a commercialized aspect of art, creating book covers, doing magazine editorial, anything like that. And so as I was getting into that program more and more, I had some neat opportunities where I was able to do like a little picture book for a really small publisher. The money sucked. It was awful. But it was like my first real professional gig doing a picture book, and it was really cool.
You're still like, this is confirming the starving artist fear.
Right. And it was, and it wasn't long before I realized that I wasn't going to provide for my family very quickly or very well with this yet. And so as I was getting closer to graduating and realizing that as a graduate with a degree, that meant nothing,
Right.
Like it's what I can do and who's going to pay attention enough to me to give me the opportunity.
Yes. So meritocracy, like earning what you deserve in your skill set, and then marketing.
Yeah.
Getting in front of eyeballs of people who will pay for what you can offer.
Yeah. And so I was, obscurity was massive. Nobody knew who the heck I was. And I was contacting every publishing house I could think of, especially the big ones, which, back then it was like I was a nobody and I had nothing going for me other than I had some skills. But I sent out all of these applications or resumes or whatever to all these different publishing houses, and it was just crickets.
Yeah.
Never heard anything back from anybody,
Ooh,
And so it was
discouraging, man.
Yeah.
And fearful. Like,
yeah, it was terrifying.
Oh, because you already have the family. I remember when I married Rachel, I was like, the pressure and to provide.
Yeah.
And the fear of like, what if this doesn't work? Yeah.
Well, and growing up in a home where that's what a father did, that's what a man did, is he provides for his family. And so it was very much ingrained in me. And I'm like, dentistry doesn't look so bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Did I make the mistake? And
yes, because then you start second guessing the choice and like, that guy might have been full of it.
Yeah. So, what anybody else would do when they're under pressure is you get pretty creative when the stakes get high. It's like, how can I make this work? And so I had heard a conversation from a friend of ours who was looking to get back into college after graduating and doing a post-baccalaureate program to get a teaching certificate. And then the school I was at, they had that program for people who already had a bachelor's degree but didn't have, the next like the few credentials they would need or the classes and credits to get their certificate to teach. And so I was able to petition, and I had to connect with some people higher up and have just talk to some people in their office and explain my situation. But it made sense, and they were kind enough to grant me the ability to double major.
Very
and to go. So I was a BFA major in illustration, but I also ended up going to the Bachelor of Science in Art Education.
Okay.
And so for me, it was like, you know what? I'll be a teacher. And to me, it was always like for a while until I get my art career.
Great.
Off the ground.
Okay. So you were still chasing that vision.
And so my vision was, okay, I'm going to do something that I don't hate while I'm chasing what I really want.
I love that. Wow, there's another element.
And it, like I said, I didn't want to be a teacher. Like that was far from my radar, for a long time. And so it was a hard pill to swallow. But what was neat is because I was at that point, I was a pretty accomplished artist. And so when I applied for teaching jobs, people they saw
you could just show your portfolio.
Exactly. They saw that this guy isn't just
has an art degree
hobbyist,
right.
But this guy is a legitimate artist. Yeah. It's like, what a great opportunity for these kids. And
awesome.
So every job I applied for, I was offered, which was incredible. And
what a difference from all the other ones you sent out and never heard back.
Right. Right. So but it was neat to have that affirmation, and it was neat. And one of the jobs, there was over 50 applicants, and just to get an interview, they only interviewed 4 people, and it was the teaching job in Cody, Wyoming, and the other job I had tentatively accepted was in a far corner of Wyoming, and the reason that we went to Wyoming is just they paid better.
Yeah,
the pay was significantly more than any of the other states around. But I was going to be at a middle school in a place that I didn't want to have a family. And I had tentatively accepted that position because it looked like the only option at the time. But then I was able to interview with Cody and absolutely loved Cody. And Cody's a wonderful place to raise a family. It was everything we wanted.
that's so cool.
And so we were praying and fasting and just going through all that, lots of energy, to the universe or God, whatever you want to call it. And it was just like, we want this so bad. And when we got offered the job, one of the things they said was, we don't even know why we're choosing you. Like, out of the 4 people we interviewed, everybody would be phenomenal for this job, but we just keep coming back to you.
It's awesome.
So it was really neat. And then got the teaching job, and I was supporting my family.
Yep.
All of our needs were met with that. And then I had a couple oil painting classes in college that I absolutely loved. And so I was like,
I was going to ask that. Where did you get introduced to the oil painting?
Yeah. So I had 2 oil painting classes in college, and I just fell in love with oil paint.
That's awesome.
But I didn't because I was in the illustration program and commercial art, it's like, you might as well do digital. Like, why mess with all the mess of paint when you just do it digitally on the computer, and you have the capacity to edit, and that comes with technology. And so I kind of had pushed away the oil paints for, honestly, it had probably been 3 or 4 years since I'd even touched them when I got that teaching job.
Dude, this is a huge part of your story that I didn't know. Like, the teaching gig brought you back to oil paint, where the pursuit of the digital stuff was taking you away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's cool though is the digital has played a very significant role in my process, that creative process, coming up with the ideas. And so I'm so grateful that happened.
You had to get all the building blocks for now your path.
Yeah.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And as we're going along through life, this happens to us too. It's like, why are we going over here? I don't want to go over here. And only in hindsight, you realize, oh, I had to go over there.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I'm way over here now. What for? And like, what's this? And then it bring you back. It's like God and his universe are just orchestrating. Like, you're doing these things you're resistant to. You're like, you need this, you need this, you need this. And you kind of piece it together.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's so fun to look back and think about it. And so when I got back into oils, it was ugly.
Was that kind of a natural, was that what you started teaching?
No, honestly, I wasn't even teaching it, but it was the fact that financially, I was in a position now where all of our needs were met, and I had time. I had nights, weekends, I had holidays, I had the summer break.
Yep.
And it was like, I can go get another job, or I can pursue the art.
Yeah.
And rather than pursuing the digital, illustration stuff that was kind of grinding, it was kind of soul grinding. It was a lot of work with very little pay. And I was like, you know what? I want to do oils.
That's awesome.
And so I jumped into oils. It was, at least from my perspective, it was ugly. It was ugly at first.
You got to suck before you see.
Right. And I was rusty. It had been 3 or 4 years since I'd even touched them.
Wait, can we pause here for a second? How much personal artwork did you do through college and teaching? Like, how much there's on your own free time were you still drawing, painting, creating art, or just like you were just into all the projects? And
it was mostly the projects.
Okay.
And that didn't bother me so much. It was because I was learning so much. Mm-hmm. And so for me, every project, it didn't matter what it was, I was enjoying it.
That's awesome.
And I was
another critical element, man. In an ideal life, we get to enjoy what we do.
Yeah.
And the fact that you loved it, I'm sure, fed so much
Absolutely. And I look back on my college experience as one of the best experiences of my life.
That's so cool.
Especially for where I was at. Like looking back now with what I know now, I feel like I could have probably gotten a lot of the same experience by just studying under other professional artists, you know. But I didn't know that was going to be. I didn't know that was where I was going to end up.
Right.
I didn't have that foresight. But to me, it was the fact that I was learning and getting better, and you could see it. You could see the progress.
That's awesome.
And just that was the fire, you know, and that just it fueled everything.
It would be the coolest thing ever to see like a time lapse
Progression
of like all your artwork.
Yeah.
It's probably not even possible, but like some portfolio from kid to now would be the coolest thing. Just watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did some great stuff in high school. Like I did these portraits for my grandparents on their 50th wedding anniversary. It was of them when they were young. And I still think they're some of my best portraits I've ever done.
While you were in high school?
Yeah, pencil portraits. Yeah.
That is amazing, man.
I gifted it to them, and it was one of those experiences that I'll never forget.
That's so special.
Because it was a gift to them, and it blew them off their rockers, you know, just and we all cried when it happened. It was such a cool experience.
But what a cool thing that your work, your gift, as in you're giving beautiful things to the world. So every time you're creating, you're making a contribution. You're making the world a more beautiful place, which is really awesome. But it also allows you to give gifts.
Right.
Your talent, your skill set is just so special. Even for this lion you're doing for me, like I was looking at the picture last night you sent of the progress you're making. I'm like, yeah, I love this thing already. Like there's this energy coming from it to me.
Yeah.
Like and you know this, and hopefully other people know that. Sometimes you see art that speaks to your soul.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful, powerful thing. And you can do that like for your grandparents or for others and offers. That's really special.
Yeah, it is really neat. And I actually don't feel like I get to do that often enough.
But every time you do it, man.
Yeah.
Like you put it in the gallery, somebody's going to buy that and be like, wow, this is going up. I know right where it's going. And every time I walk past it, right, you're doing that. You may not know about it every time, but you're doing it.
No, and that's true. And every time I meet a new collector or create that new relationship with somebody who wants to buy a painting or whatever, it's so awesome to see that emotional connection that these people get with this work and that they look at the price and they think it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
You know,
so awesome.
It's so cool.
Okay. Go back to the story. So now you're teaching at a middle school?
High school.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say middle school.
Middle school is the armpit of life.
Yeah. That's tough, man. Okay. So you're teaching the high school, and when you have time, you're now diving into oil.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so in Cody, there's a world-class museum, the Buffalo Bills Center of the West is what it's called. And with the museum, there's an art show that they do every year as a fundraising event. And I didn't know this beforehand, but it's one of the most prestigious Western art shows in the country, in the U.S.
Wow.
It's in the top 5 or 6 at least. And so the people that are the artists that are involved with that are top of the line, world-class artists.
And there you are, right in that little town, without knowing about it.
Without knowing.
God and his universe conspiring in your favor yet again.
Yeah, and it's hard not to you look back, it's like, how obvious is this?
Yeah.
You know? So the neat thing was, I think I was like 24 or 25. And they have, with that art show, they have a scholarship program that they offer for young aspiring artists who live in Wyoming.
Me again.
Me also. Yeah. So I did one. I think it was honestly my first wildlife painting. It was of a bighorn sheep that I had photographed between Cody and Yellowstone. There's a stretch there, beautiful, beautiful country. And in the wintertime, these bighorn sheep come down
near the road.
And so I was photographing them. And anyway, so I I created this painting of a bighorn sheep ram on top of like a rocky mountain, and then you could see like some mountains behind him and some sky. And it sounds better than it actually looked. But I was thrilled with it, you know, and it was probably my first wildlife painting ever, and I submitted that one for this competition, you know, this app, and I won.
Wow.
You know, and I have no idea how many people actually applied for it. I bet I was like one of 3 or 4, maybe. It's kind of just a small, obscure little thing that I don't think a lot of people know about, you know. But anyway, so I won, and I got
again another serendipitous, beautiful moment of a passageway, a door to your future.
And the cool thing, like I got $500 for it, which was awesome. But like even more so, my piece was hung with all the other artists in that art show, and I had the little plaque underneath it. It's called the Gilly Fales Award. It's a family who lost their daughter who was an artist, and they wanted to do this for young, upcoming, aspiring artists. So it's just a really cool thing. So I was the Gilly Fales Award winner off in the corner, you know, but still my work was hanging with these seasoned professionals who were at the top of their game and at the top of the industry, you know? And I was meeting all of these artists that like, and which is crazy. Like you fast forward now, I'm rubbing shoulders with all those guys, you know, and
exposure. There it is again. Proximity, exposure, connection.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so with the scholarship money, I was able to take a workshop with a phenomenal landscape painter, you know, and my work improved.
So you're still pursuing taking classes, taking courses, even though you're a teacher, you're like, I'm going.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because especially you start seeing the art of these other guys, and I know there's a gap. There's still a massive gap.
Another element of exposure there. We have to constantly be exposing ourselves to those who are above us, ahead of us. So we see the gap and then say, hey, okay, how do I bridge the gap? How do I get there?
Yeah. And it was the next year that I had loved that workshop, and I was looking for other workshops to pursue with professional artists. And another one came available, and it was with a wildlife painter. And just there was something about his work that just blew my mind. It was so exciting and different. And at this point, I'd had probably I was back into the oils for probably a year and a half, you know, so I was making some good progress, but I was hitting walls, and I didn't really know what they were. It was just, I just knew I was stuck where I was at.
I think every one of us listening can relate to that.
Yeah.
Hitting walls, you're like, why am I stuck? I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I was working hard, and I was actively pursuing what I could, but I was just, I was, my level was just lower than I wanted. And it was like, but I just couldn't get above that. So I did this workshop with Greg Beecham, who is a phenomenal, I think, in the top 5 wildlife artists alive today.
Wow.
Like, and maybe even in the top 3.
Wow.
From my perspective, and maybe I'm biased, but.
And that was the course you took from him.
Yeah. So I took a workshop with him.
Go learn from the best.
It was like 4 days, and my work leapt in quality.
In 4 days.
In 4 days.
This is this principle I love to teach, where you take decades and turn them into days. So his decades of work, he compiled into a 4-day thing, and you went, invested in the coaching, and there's the leap.
Yeah. And it was crazy, because it was so neat the way that he presented his process, and I was able to talk to him, like me and the other students that were there. We were just asking him questions. So as he's working, okay, why are you doing that? What did you do there? You know, and just being able to pick apart his process. And I was a sponge, because I was so ready. I had been working my tail off, hitting that wall, you know, but I was ready for the information.
Perfect.
I was in that mindset where I was just right now ready to absorb it. And
that is another critical.
And it wasn't several big things. It was just a few little things about some of the instruments he was using and the way he was like the ways he was using them and the way he was thinking about the process.
Yep.
And it was and it was incredible because it was immediate. The new work I created after that workshop, people wanted to buy.
Oh man, that is awesome.
Because I was always posting it on social media. I was always doing that, and I'd get the people who were like, "Oh, good job, Mark."
Yeah, way to go.
Great. But then all of a sudden, it was like, oh, "Is that for sale?
Yeah,
is that available?" And that artist, Greg Beecham, he actually became a mentor to me.
Yeah.
He saw the fire that was in me, and he was really excited to work with me. And I actually was able to teach him some Photoshop skills because I had showed him some of the stuff I had composed. And he's like, "You did that on the computer?" It's like,
yeah.
All right, you got to teach me. And he gave me one of the paintings he demoed in that class,
Wow.
which I still have in my studio.
Wow.
And yeah, you couldn't rip that out of my dying hands.
It's so special. It's meaningful.
Yeah.
That was a huge turning point.
It was another pivot. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. So then that's where, okay, you're like, okay, this real now, because you reached a new level of professionalism.
Yeah.
You became more of a professional.
Yeah.
People started.
Then I started applying. I applied for some different art shows that I got accepted. There was a big one up in Great Falls, Montana that I didn't even know about, but somebody who was at that workshop with Greg Beecham, who I made a connection with.
Boom, another connection.
Exactly.
Like there's so many things that come from this.
And I think to me, like the big lesson is like when you start moving, when you start doing and pursuing, opportunities present themselves.
They abound.
And relationships and connections are created. And it all just rolls into the next thing, and it just creates momentum. And so I applied for that art show, and it was funny because the art show was like a month away, and I applied thinking they already know who's going to be in the art show. I'm just letting them know who I am,
right?
And then maybe next year I'll be in the show, and I'll have a long time to prepare for it.
Yep.
I get an email. "All right, Mark, you're in." I had a month to prepare for.
Meaning a month to create a piece.
No, to multiple pieces. This venue, basically you go to this, it's like a big hotel, and all the art rooms become little mini gallery spaces for artists, individual artists. To sell.
Wow.
And so I had a room, I had a fee. I'm like, I got to pay $1,000 to get into this. But I've got to have art to sell.
Yeah.
And I had, I had worked with Greg Beecham for the last 6 to 8 months, so I had some work.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough, at least from what I felt, it wasn't nearly enough to go and sell an art show. And so I just started working nights and weekends.
Beautiful.
Everything I could do to just produce as much as possible to have enough work. And I borrowed somebody's display panels that I knew. It's just like I didn't know how to, but I kind of threw it together, and I showed up, and I there's a lot of things when I got there that was just like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. I didn't get that. It was just like thrown into the deep end, and I have weights, not floating devices. And I'm just like, I got to figure this out.
So it's how you learn.
Yeah.
Just jump in and figure it out. And so you stumble, you fall on your face, you embarrass yourself. So what? But like you go learn.
Yeah. And I had that mentality where it's like, I'm figuring this out, and I had enough of a positive outlook to not let it ruin me or wreck me or get discouraged by it. But it was like, I'm doing the best I can. And I was so thrilled just to be there.
Yeah.
Because of the shoulders I was rubbing with. It was this group of artists that were, it was a massive range of different styles, different subject matters, and it that group of artists kind of became my family.
Well, I was going to ask, is that a pretty cool, warm, welcoming
Absolutely.
demographic, or is this
Absolutely.
competition, cutthroat,
It
I'm
was
not talking
really
to
soft
you,
play at the
arrogant?
band.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're helpful and cool and open.
They were so helpful. And like,
that makes such a difference.
yeah. And that's one thing, especially with people who aren't familiar with the art world. Western art, I don't know what the other genres are like. There's a lot of different art genres you can get involved in, but with Western art, we're a family
That's cool.
and we take care of our own. And when somebody shows up who they're trying, but they're struggling, it's like all hands on deck. Yeah. Like,
that's so cool.
we're all here to help.
Well, if more industries were like that,
Yeah.
especially in business or sports, anywhere, it's like, hey, man, you got fire in you. Let's go. You got this. You can figure this out. Maybe try this, try that. And if we had more encouragement, there would be more mastery worldwide.
Yeah. Amen. And it's funny because there's so many of the artists that were at that first year that I was there who have become some of my absolute best friends.
That's awesome.
Not just colleagues, but just good friends.
So cool.
And it's like they're my people. Like we're artists. We understand the struggles and the challenges, and we can geek out about all the terminology. It's like a family reunion, but you get to handpick all the ones.
Right. Yeah, you find your little tribe. That's awesome. I love that. And did you make some money?
Yeah, and I think I made like $6,000 or $7,000, which was like a month and a half of being a teacher, and it was just like, mind blowing, boom. Just this like, this is real money, and it was so incredible. And it was at that point that it was like, oh, I can actually support a family as a painter.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I experienced that I didn't really believe it until I had that experience. I sold 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 paintings. I don't even know, but it was real money.
Yep.
And it was just it another light the fire. And so I came home. And my wife was thrilled. We had all this extra money. It's like, holy crap! We can roll for our vehicle.
Yeah, teacher salary and little kids. You're like, look what I got.
Yeah,
awesome.
And so pursuing it nights and weekends. It went from pursuing it during the summer months to this is my night and weekend gig too.
Love it. So you're earning it, man. You're paying the price.
Yeah. And it got to the point as the years went on that I was working 20 to 30 hours part-time every week during the school year.
Yeah.
Drawing, painting, getting ready for shows and all that. And
so running simultaneously.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely.
And that's tough. It takes a strain. It takes strain on you and strain on the family and work.
It became, where it just wasn't something that we could continue.
Right. Which I guess that's a good problem, right? Where because a lot of people even listening, they're wanting to have multiple streams of income. They're wanting to start their own business while they have a career or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're just pursuing this. And I think that's a good way to do it. It's demanding and challenging for a while, but then you get to a point you're like, this cannot continue.
Exactly.
There's enough. It's viable enough. I have proof of concept.
Yep.
And I've paid the price now. I'm like, okay, I can part ways.
Yeah. And the crossroads was, do I keep teaching and just like minimally keep pursuing art and really cut back on my production as an artist? Or do I bag the 9 to 5 consistent paycheck, benefits, security, quote security.
Yep.
And run with this. And every year I'd get like $1,000 raise as a teacher, which it's like barely, maybe, I don't even think that's beating inflation really.
Right.
Like, and we, more kids came along the way, it was 2018 when that happened. I had a goal.
That wasn't that long ago.
I had a goal at that art show that one in Great Falls. I had a monetary goal that if I hit that number, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give the principal my notice that this will be my last year teaching.
Yeah.
And we rocked that goal.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing to walk in that next Monday to.
Okay, so it was back at that same show years later.
Yeah.
You hit it, and then Monday you're like, hey,
Yeah.
that's it. I'm out.
We'll walk into the office and say, hey, this is my last year teaching.
Yeah.
And anyway, they could see it coming.
Sure.
The writing was on the wall. They'd seen my career growing and building.
Yeah.
And they were really kind and good about it.
Good.
It worked out really well. So
another element, we got to have, you realize you got something going. You see somebody succeeding. Even like a lot of people listening to this have employees, they have a team. If you see somebody just excelling and pursuing, don't hold them back.
Yeah.
Don't hold them down. But like, you are just crushing it. Go.
Yeah.
Go succeed. Go make your own way.
And it was
chase greatness.
Have that.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Okay, so now you're a full-time artist.
Yeah, full-time
painter.
Yep.
And you kept pursuing wildlife. That's predominantly what you do.
Yeah.
Right. And are there other things you enjoy doing outside of wildlife?
Absolutely. I love. In fact, it doesn't really matter what I'm painting. I'll paint a still life, which is you put objects in a nice, like a flower pot, or I don't know, anything you
even like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
I really enjoy that.
That's fascinating.
I like people portraits. Like that kind of goes back to my beginning.
Well, right. That's
I landscape. I love painting landscape too.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but for you, your career is in wildlife.
Mostly, yeah.
And so do you find that that's where the money is too? Like if you do landscape, the money's not as there as much?
I wouldn't say that because I've painted a few landscapes here and there, and they've typically sold, but they've all been really little. And
little as in small dimension.
Yeah.
Okay.
Smaller paintings.
Yeah.
Small price tag.
Yep.
But it's like there's so much demand for my animals.
Yep.
These portraits and
beautiful
portraits, and
with good reason.
Yeah,
they're amazing.
Yeah, they're my bread and butter, and in so many ways they're a blast to paint.
Yeah,
and
challenging
and challenging. Yeah, and anyway, so it's been a really wonderful journey, but it's also gotten to the point where it's like I would like to feel like I have a little bit more freedom to explore. I would love to go take another workshop from a portrait artist and go live models.
Yes.
For a week or two.
That would be awesome.
And I would love to go take a workshop from somebody over in Italy, and or something like where we're painting the landscape on location, or there's things that I would love to still do that I don't feel like at this point I don't feel like I have all that freedom to do.
I can see you in Tuscany, overlooking the vineyards and the estate with your little easel set up, just painting away.
Yeah.
Man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. So cool. Okay, so now you're also teaching courses of how to paint, which again, passing along. You're already contributing through art, but now you're contributing through helping people who want to get better, which is awesome. So you have courses out available. You have your own podcast that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's available as well, and YouTube channel, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And you do commissions. Like people want something, they reach out. And those of you listening, trust me, you want to reach out and commission a painting. Pick your thing. Rachel is getting a Frisian horse because that speaks to her soul. For me, it's the lion.
Awesome.
Yeah, going to be so awesome. You guys just like, if you have something, some image that just speaks to you or your family, like make it a reality. That's awesome.
We talked about this and you mentioned this, like there's something about original art that surpasses any kind of a reproduction of a painting or even a photograph. There's energy and life in an oil painting. And I think it has everything to do with the creative process. It's that human aspect of mixing the paint and putting it down and making all those decisions. Like to me, it's like I look at this original painting, especially in person, and it just feeds me.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just,
same.
yeah.
And your style is unique in that, like, there's a lot of texture. Like, you have a lot of paint on there.
Yeah.
And I know, I love it too. It's like, it's not flat. You're like, there's a lot on there, and it's late. And now I get to see you do it. There's layers and layers and layers of paint drawing out the image, and it's it. And then there's just one of them.
Yeah,
there's just one
of a kind.
There's one line.
Yeah,
that's going to be on my wall here in this room.
Yeah,
right. It's so powerful, so awesome. So as you're still growing and progressing, you still find yourself seeking improvement. You're still practicing techniques. You're still exposing yourself to another level. You still find journey.
I would say I'm, one of the things I've been trying to push is complexity in my work, multiple animals, environment,
Ooh, yeah.
Which is whole nother level of challenge for sure. And I'm still working through a lot of that. I feel like I've had some really great success in some of that, but it's not where I want to be necessarily. Yeah. And I've even thought of potentially painting some religious subjects, or I don't know. Like I just feel like I'm only 40. I just turned 40 this year. And so it's like, I've got another 40 plus years to paint. And I'm excited because I don't know where that's going, but it's going to be an exploration.
And as you go through just the phases of human development, your 40s are going to be different. Your 50s are going to be different. Your 60s are going to be different. And you take all these skills that you've developed and the things you've cultivated, even the way you see the world.
Yeah.
And who knows what's in front of you to create.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what I'm most excited about now.
Yeah.
So,
well, because it's wide open.
Well, and I want freedom, and that's one of the main reasons why I've tried to do this podcast and these courses and these online stuff, is so that it can give me a little less time just being a wildlife portrait producer, which I don't get me wrong, I really enjoy it, but it's I want the freedom to start exploring some of this without the burden of having to provide with it. You know what I mean?
Right. And just chase new avenues, new opportunities, new vistas. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So any last thoughts that you've gleaned from your journey, or just any last message for anybody listening that's pursuing mastery? I mean, I'm pursuing mastery in, I would say, multiple aspects of my life. Well, anything from marriage and parenting and getting ready to be a grandpa, and but in business and in mentoring and coaching and speaking and learning languages. I mean, I just love this. For me, life is the path of mastery. I'm just chasing personal excellence.
Yeah.
But any last thoughts for those of us, all of us who are chasing this?
I would say that to fall in love with the process, that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey there.
Yeah.
And all the growth that it's the becoming. It's all about becoming.
Exactly.
And the price, whatever it is worth it. Like,
and it's going to be a high price.
And it will be. Absolutely
not.
I've spent, I don't even know how to quantify the time, but I know it's well over 10,000 hours.
Way beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that comes cheaply. And if it was, it wouldn't even be worth pursuing. Right. But fall in love with the process and the challenge of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, love the struggle, love the fact that you can't do it yet.
Yep. Ooh, that's where most people want to give up. We want to throw in the towel because the struggle's infuriating.
And realize that every time you fail, like, it's just one way not to do it again. It's just like,
it's fertilizer.
Eliminate. Yeah. It's fertilizer. It stinks.
It stinks, but man, it's good for you.
It's good for you.
That is awesome. What a great message. Brother, thanks. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for the beauty you add to the world.
Hey,
it's inspiring.
I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Art podcast. If you're interested in resources and education to help you successfully create art and then sell it, please check out the Business of Art course in the link below. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.